Hi. Today I'm reading A Village Called Harmony by James Kavanagh. Once upon a time, in the foothills of a great mountain range, there was a peaceful village called Harmony. Its colorful frame houses rolled across a fresh green valley and crawled halfway up the surrounding hills. Beyond the hills to the north and east were the towering peaks and bluffs of the Explorer Mountains, standing like brown and purple giants suspended from the heavens and crowned with snow from late September till the middle of summer. Each year in spring, boiling rivulets of melting snow splashed down the highest mountains, gouging out streams that flowed swollen and frothy into the singing river. The river then roared through the foothills and across rich green meadows, tearing fiercely at banks of marsh grass and wildflowers until it reached Harmony. There it more leisurely spread out and wound its way southerly through the village, then picked up speed as it narrowed and turned west and rushed impatiently to the sea in an unending circle of life. Harmony had remained a world unto itself, since to travel there was arduous enough to be almost impossible. According to an ancient edict, reinforced by centuries of tradition, strangers were not welcome lest they introduce novel attitudes that might infect a tranquil way of life. For the same reason, no one who left was permitted to return. As was said in a well-known adage, it is not kindness to offer the fox a bed among the hens. Actually, there was little reason to leave Harmony, for it was as beautiful and fruitful a place as there was in the whole world. There was a rich, fertile soil combed carefully from the earth and deposited by the retreating waters of a river that eons ago had flowed through the entire valley. Everywhere were towering pines and whispering cypresses, at times gathered in silent reflective forests, or scattered among live oaks and elms and maples like invincible sentries that stared beyond the mountains to protect the village. And scattered about the hills like stone monuments were massive granite boulders tossed there like pebbles by powerful glacial arms thousands of decades before. Hidden in the hills were mirrored lakes sculpted from rock by the fists of an ancient ice flow that resisted all containment. Deer grazed on tender leaves of wild plants and fruit trees and crept cautiously at twilight to sip at the dark pools of the singing river. Bobcats and raccoons prowled the groves at night. Black bears munched blueberries and strawberries at the rim of the nearest hill. Porcupines and opossums lurked in the brush. Silver and gold trout flashed behind rocks or waded along the banks of the river to surprise a caddis or mayfly. Occasionally, a grinning red fox was seen crossing a dirt road, and silver wolves sang love songs to a distant mate under a full moon. Mallards and widgeons nibbled in silent swamps or played on quiet ponds of water lilies. Ring-necked pheasants and quail waddled along vineyards or in cornfields, and in the fall, the Canadian geese and dazzling white swans flew in perfect formation from the wheat fields to sleep along the edge of the river. As the village grew through countless generations, houses of stone and wood had moved from the edge of the river up the slopes of the hills in neat rows of red and yellow, blue and brown and lavender. Each house had its own small garden, a neatly stacked woodpile, a few cows and goats, chickens and pigs, and a large fieldstone chimney with wisps of white smoke rising above the distant mountain peaks to join the floating clouds. In the center of the village was the town hall and a giant stone church with a large bell tower and stained glass windows much older than anyone alive. Across from the church was the square, a large park with rows of flowers and a waterfall, a wooden bridge across the singing river, and benches along a cobblestone walk. In the center of the square was an elevated stage for summer concerts and plays. Each newborn child was given a celebration with wine and dancing in the square and the ringing of church bells across the valley. Each death was a quiet period of mourning, with a solemn eulogy in the stone church and the echoing faith of the congregation chanting its plaintive hymns to the faraway mountains that touch the heavens. A marriage was a weekend pageant with games and music, mounds of fresh bread and simmering stews, green vegetables and steaming potatoes, fresh apple pies and strawberry tarts, red wine and thick cider, and dancing and singing far into the night. There was a hospital of white stone and airy bright rooms at the edge of the village in a grove of walnut trees. On the opposite side was a wooden school bordering a pine forest, and behind the church was a well-kept graveyard. There was no jail or bank or orphanage. No police or soldiers or newspaper. Crime was rare and was dealt with by families themselves or by the mayor and village council. Punishment was most often hard work and restriction from celebrations, and most of all, the shame of the community. Elections were held every 5 years, and the candidates for mayor or the village council were elected by a shout of approbation in the square. The elders, that is, the aged and respected citizens, took turns conducting Sunday services in the church, telling people simple traditional stories and parables from the archives of Harmony, offering brief prayers of thanks to God, and selecting songs that even the oldest and youngest knew by heart. After the service, there was fresh bread and fruit, milk and cheese for everyone in the square. The men lingered to talk of their work, the women laughed and fondled babies, then hurried home to prepare dinner, and the children chased and shouted until it was time to leave. There was work enough for everyone, and each took it for granted that hard work was a basic part of life. The individual craftsmanship of each family, honed through centuries of tradition, was a source of great personal pride. The tailor made beautiful clothes for the cobbler and miller in return for perfectly stitched shoes and the best flour. The weaver exchanged smooth cloth for fat strawberries or a fine feathered hat. The carpenter and woodsman were as respected as the miller and blacksmith, the housewife as important as the healer or mayor. Only the elders, men and women too old or feeble to labor, were exempted from work and afforded a special respect and dignity earned from the gathered wisdom and dedication of a long life. A gifted musician or storyteller, a talented painter or singer, was considered a special treasure from God for the joy of the whole community. But no matter what work was done, it was taken for granted that it would be done well. A common saying, often quoted by an elder on Sunday, maintained, "To make a good candle is to honor the bee and oneself." Another adage said, "Imperfect work is an insult to the clouds that labor to cool the meadow." Through the years, there was little reason in Harmony for greed or jealousy or unresolved strife, and when any of these problems emerged, the elders offered words of comfort and understanding, insisting that the whole village belonged to everyone and everyone belonged to the whole village. Of course, there were disagreements, even tragedies, but they concerned all the people. As was said, a single unsettled stone can create an avalanche. When a young tinsmith drowned or the tanner lost 2 children in a landslide, everyone was upset. The entire village mourned a boy born without sight, a young girl with a twisted, deformed body, a grandmother who lost her wits, or a fierce quarrel between 2 brothers over a piece of their father's land. On such occasions, all of Harmony seemed distressed until the bereaved were comforted or enemies made lasting peace. Quarrels were not allowed to smolder without confrontation and discussion. The witless and crippled were cared for at home and protected by the populace, and grief was shared in a multitude of hearts and compassionate spirits. For the most part, the people of Harmony were strong of body and will. Discipline was learned from the earliest years, respect for elders was imbibed almost at nursing, and forgiveness and understanding and brotherly love were as obvious as the mountains respecting the boundaries of the meadows and rivers. An ancient story was told by one of the elders each year at the planting celebration on a Sunday in mid-April. It was always told the same way. Once a man was thirsting at the bottom of a high hill. His eyes saw the deer gathering at the brow of the hill to drink, and his ears heard the splashing of water. At the bidding of his eyes and ears, the man began to climb, but his feet objected. Why must we obey the eyes and ears and work so hard? The knees do nothing. So he began to walk on his knees. Soon the knees complained. What of the hands? Immediately he began walking on his hands, but the hands pointed out the futility of the climb, since only the mouth wanted water. Finally, the man collapsed and died on the hill. We, all of us, are that man, and each part depends on the whole. No one is greater or less. No one is sufficient to himself. Thus says our ancient wisdom. One Sunday morning during the harvest celebration, when the villagers gathered in the square for breakfast, there was a shout of confusion and surprise at the far edge of the park by the walnut grove. 2 of the elders who had been chatting nearby made their way to the circle of bewilderment and saw a strange young man lying on the ground. The boys and girls parted at the approach of the old men. The stranger, pale and exhausted, looked up at them weakly. The children held their breath in excitement. "Who are you, and whence have you come?" one of the elders asked gently. "I am Odious," he said quietly. "I come from far across the mountains." "You're hungry." The elders signaled a boy and girl to bring bread and goat's milk. The stranger ate and drank almost voraciously. A crowd began to gather, and the tailor noticed the stranger's torn cloak. "I will bring him something fine to wear." The elder nodded agreement. The cobbler approached and went off to bring leather sandals. Then the elder bade Odious to follow him and took him to his own home, prepared water for his bath, and offered him his own bed on which to rest. That night the elder and his wife slept on the floor by the stone fireplace. In the morning his wife prepared a hearty breakfast of bread, eggs, fruit, and warm milk, while the elder walked to the healer's house and led him back to observe the stranger. Is he well enough to travel? The healer briefly examined Odious. Quite sound, he said. The elder looked at the stranger kindly. We are all grateful that you survived your difficult journey. Now we must ask you to rest for a few days and then return to your own people. We will prepare food for your journey, and 2 of our strongest young men will accompany you to the top of the distant mountains. From there, it will be easy to find your own village. I am a townsman, Odious exclaimed. I do not want to return. There is no love where I live, only greed and indifference. Each man and woman is in a private war with every other. The rich amass what they can, and the poor brood to divest them or plot dishonest ways to amass fortunes. No one is at peace and prosperity. Even men of religion are as narrow and self-centered as the townspeople they serve. Men who do not work are rewarded, and some seek to supplant men, and women seek to supplant men. The children are undisciplined and rude. The young avaricious and ambitious only to succeed without effort. Families are without authority and understanding. The elder could hardly believe the words he was hearing, but permitted Odious to continue. The old are ignored and neglected in prosperity. The poor are despised and grudgingly placed on public doles. The sick are considered a burden and responsible for their own undoing. Only wealth and pleasure and physical health are thought to be of value. All of the old laws and traditions are mocked. Politics has replaced justice, and new leaders make prisoners of their helpless disciples with strange, inhuman cults until the whole land seems to have grown mad. No one trusts anyone, a man's word means nothing, and lawyers are invoked at the slightest provocation, only to be confronted with other lawyers. What are lawyers? The elder asked. Odious paused. Well, they are men and women who represent a person, advocates who speak for someone who seeks justice. Why do not men and women speak for themselves? They find it difficult since the laws and court procedures are complex and confusing. Why not simplify the laws so that even children can understand? It is no longer easy to know. Why not simplify the laws so that even children can understand? Justice is complex only when men and women are not honest. Odious smiled patronizingly. Life is not as simple in a large town. It is no longer easy to know what is right and wrong. The elder spoke softly. Size means nothing. A single family knows only chaos without truth and strong, honest leadership. You must return to your town and learn to be honest. What good is honesty if no one is honest? The elder paused. The question had never presented itself, and he seemed puzzled. I'm not sure, he said quietly. Odious pleaded with him. Please let me stay here, that I too may learn to be honest. The elder was moved. It is not my decision. I will request a meeting of the mayor and the council and all the elders. Perhaps the whole village must be present to decide in such a grave and unprecedented matter. We have never admitted a stranger to our village. Our ancient wisdom says a single locust can destroy the entire harvest. But you plead your case well and deserve a hearing. After some preparation, the elder arranged the meeting and addressed the stranger. The whole village will gather in the church. The meeting will take place when all are assembled. He had hardly spoken when the church bell began tolling, and men and women and children filed from the shops and fields, from homes and school to take their places in church. Only the infirm were not expected to attend. When all were gathered in the oak benches, the mayor and council assembled on one side of the sanctuary and the elders on the opposite side. Odious sat on a comfortable chair close to the congregation. An elder, white-headed and gentle, rose and spoke kindly. We are all aware of the stranger in our midst. We have not gathered here to harass or embarrass, certainly not to accuse, but Odious has requested to remain in our village because his own town has become an unhappy place without peace or honesty. The congregation groaned spontaneously in shock and surprise, but were silent again when the hoary old gentleman gently lifted a dark, wrinkled hand. We know that his request is contrary to our ancient traditions. The quail does not warm the pigeon in winter. But the same traditions teach that every reasonable request must receive a hearing. Even the crow sings if you understand his music. For this reason we have called a meeting." He addressed the stranger. "Odious, what work would you perform if you were to remain with us in the village of Harmony?" "I'm not really skilled at anything," he spoke haltingly. There was an uncomfortable stirring among the villagers and another brief gasp of surprise. The elder again raised his hand softly. "But surely you worked in prosperity each day. Did you fell trees or plant them, bake bread or grind wheat or forge metal? What is your family's craft?" "I did none of these things, and my family has no craft. Things do not work like that in prosperity, but I have done very well. I have acquired a great deal of land and property." Puzzlement erupted in the congregation, and another elder spoke out. "How did you acquire more land and property than you need?" Odious smiled at the naivety. "I bought other people's land and sold it for profit." Capitalism. Why do parents not give their land to their children as we do? Our wisdom says the sun warms the entire land and shares its heat with men and beasts and birds. Is it not the same with the people of prosperity? No, it is not the same. In my town, land is sold like meat and flour and cloth. Some people own much land and others want more. So they buy it and sell it like apples to make a profit. And the land grows more valuable with every sale. The people were shocked and a councilman interjected, "Why does anyone want more land than he can work on and enjoy? In prosperity, a man can make money from all the things he owns. The more he owns, the more money he has and the more land and houses he can buy." "What is money?" the mayor asked. "Gold and silver, valuable metals that men and women in prosperity prize. They are a means of exchange in our town. If I want a new cloak or more land, I give the seller the gold that he asks for whatever I buy." The people were astounded, and an elder asked, "But why are these metals so valuable? They cannot be eaten or drunk. They are not seeds that can be planted." The people laughed loudly until Odious continued, "These metals are rare and precious, and people treasure them." The congregation shook their heads in astonishment, and the mayor, still confused, continued the questioning. "But how does the value of land increase as you have said? It is always the same land." "The price of everything increases when it is hard to get. Meat, bread, flax. The land is no different." "But surely there's land for everyone. The land belongs to all the people, and our possession of it is only a stewardship and a protection for one's family. No one can amass more than can be lived on or worked to be made fruitful." Odious's head was weary. "I do not think I can explain it, but some people have much land and others have none." The people were totally bewildered. "And you made a living by buying another's land?" "Yes." "Did you plant trees or corn, remove rocks, or build a house?" "No, I did none of those things. I only sold the house that another had built or the land that another had improved." "Then you did nothing," said an elder, more in shock than in accusation. "No wonder there is no peace and prosperity, and you are searching for honesty." The people of Harmony continued to shake their heads. A tall, thin councilman spoke out. "But how can you stay here when you do not know how to work? We have no land to sell." "I have gold, rather a great deal of it." Odious pointed to a leather purse he carried. "Gold means nothing to us," the elder said. "Only your labor and craft purchases anything in Harmony. Can you dig a well or build a home for children?" "Perhaps I could learn." "But you are already old enough." "I know I can work hard," Odious pleaded. "It is beautiful here, the people are good, and I long to remain with you." There was utter silence in the church. After what seemed several minutes, the elder who had opened the meeting spoke softly. "We will decide now." The elders left the sanctuary through a rear door and were joined by the mayor and the council in a private meeting room. They returned in 15 minutes. The spokesman stood next to Odious's chair and addressed the people. "Our decision is a difficult one. This has never happened before in our history, but we have decided on the basis of what has been handed down. It seems unlikely that Odious can make it across the mountains because the snows will come early this year. Even the deer have already left the heights, and his journey could soon be hazardous, perhaps impossible. There is no reason to take such a risk. We will permit Odious to live among us until the summer, when we will make a final decision." Then the elder led the people in song, and the meeting ended. The next few weeks, Odious knew happiness for the first time in years. He lived with one of the elders and his wife, who had an extra room. They treated him as their own beloved son and first taught him about gardening and the care of the livestock. When the spring returns, you'll have your own small plot of land. During the fall, Odious was apprenticed to the potter, but soon proved too clumsy to mold the clay into the assorted shapes of bowls and plates. Small children already knew the secrets of glazing and firing, and it embarrassed him to be an awkward beginner. He tried furniture making and carpentry with equal lack of success, and complained to the elder of the long hours of hard work. "It is too difficult here. I am not accustomed to such hard work." "Work is hard only when it is not suited to your own abilities. You must be patient and find what you do well. As has been said, until the hidden spring breaks through the ground and bubbles free, the stream cannot flow. You are still seeping painfully through limestone to reach the surface. It will be different when you finally feel the sun." Odious protested, "There is nothing to do here except work. It gets boring." "You are bored only because you are not yet ready to move in harmony with the seasons. Your eyes see, but you do not understand. Your ears hear, but do not comprehend. Too many sights and sounds lead to confusion and destroy energy. You must be still to hear the song of the hummingbird. Anyone who does not love the work he does can never be happy. The beaver does not hire the hare to build his dam, nor does the sheep perish because he gives up his wool. Is life only work? Of course not. Life is creation and growth, death and rebirth, rest and return. Even the earth dies in winter, but only to await the explosion of spring. Perhaps when you only gathered gold, you lost the rhythm you share with stars and flowers. Your hands were screaming to plant or harvest, and you ignored them. How can your body remain strong when it does not do what it was meant to do? In harmony, even the oldest of the elders or the smallest children grows something, if only a few flowers. Not to grow something is to despise the earth. Finally, Odious began to work with the blacksmith, forging iron from ore mined in the nearby Red Mountain into simple farm tools and wagon wheels. It was hot, hard work that required great strength younger boys didn't have, and he gradually took some pride in his rudimentary abilities. He graduated from unloading the ore from the wooden wagons to fanning the flame and stoking the clay furnace with charcoal that gave the iron the strength of crude steel. When he was finally skilled enough to extract the glowing ball of iron from the fire, then hammer it vigorously to expel the slag, and finally to work it into a coherent mass to be shaped and formed into a simple plow, he was ecstatic. It was the first time in his life that he had created anything. He asked the blacksmith endless questions about each step in the process and learned more quickly than the younger apprentices who had grown up watching the blacksmith at work and took it for granted that they would one day do what he did. The blacksmith, a tall, reserved man of 40 winters, spoke only when necessary. He grew increasingly fond of the exuberant Odious, who learned so enthusiastically that he hated to end the day. At the approach of his first winter in the valley, it was decided that Odious should move in with the blacksmith and his wife and their 3 teenage children, a dark-haired girl of 17 winters with ruddy cheeks and brown laughing eyes, and 2 strong boys of 16 and 14 winters. The whole family loved Odious and enjoyed the stories he told of prosperity, where there were tall buildings of stone and paved streets, viands of every description, and elegant ladies in fine furs with diamonds and rubies set in shining gold. One night, after a hearty meal of warm bread and lamb stew, the blacksmith's family settled before the open hearth of the stone fireplace and listened to more tales of the exciting town far across the mountains. When Odious talked again of wealthy ladies wearing rings and bracelets of pure gold, the dark-haired daughter named Raven asked Odious if they might see the gold he stored in his leather purse. When he returned from his room and emptied out the gleaming yellow coins and nuggets, there was hardly a sound in the room. The boys stared open-mouthed, Raven's eyes gleamed like stars, and even the blacksmith and his gentle wife were speechless. Finally, the blacksmith broke the silence. "I doubt it will grow any flowers." They all laughed loudly and prepared to play cards by the fire while Odious gathered up his gold and stored it away in the drawer next to his feather bed. The following week, Odious addressed the blacksmith during a walk through the square after lunch and made a simple request. "I would like to make a gold ring for Raven," he said. "She has no need of it." said her father. I know that, but I would like to make a gift of it to her. It would make me happier than I know. He did not dare to say he loved her. The blacksmith had grown to love Odious and found it hard to refuse him such a harmless request. Perhaps I should not interfere with your gift. A few months ago, you did not have the knowledge to make anything. I can well understand that it will be as much a gift to you as to my dark-haired raven. I give my permission. Odious was overjoyed and rushed home to select a large nugget of purest gold, then raced back to the blacksmith shop to melt it down, shape it, and mold it until it was just right for Raven. By playing a silly game that same night, he was able to measure the size of her finger, and the following day he gave final shape to her gift. It is a beautiful work of art, the blacksmith said. I am proud of what you have accomplished. After the evening meal, when all were gathered in front of the fire, Odious withdrew the ring from his pocket and without a word slipped it on Raven's finger. Raven's eyes glowed excitedly. What is it? She asked. A ring of gold I made for you. What is it for? Just for you to wear. It announces how beautiful you are. Her brothers laughed and made simple fun. The blacksmith and his gentle wife, smiled proudly. Raven could not stop staring at it and kissed Odious warmly on the cheek. How can I thank you? I should thank you. The gold never looked as beautiful before. Soon the gold ring was the talk of the village, and Raven was stopped a dozen times a day so that villagers could admire the gold ring Odious had made for her. Gold ring Odious had made for her. The cobbler's wife, a gracious golden-haired woman of great beauty, especially admired the ring and dreamed of it one night. At breakfast, she admitted to her husband that she wanted one like it. The cobbler approached Odious the same day and asked him if he could make a similar ring for his beautiful wife. Odious hesitated. It was a special gift for Raven. I will make you a fine pair of shoes, the finest in all of Harmony, if only you will make another ring. You do not understand, said Odious. It was something personal I did for Raven. Besides, the gold ring is far more valuable than the finest pair of shoes, more than a dozen pair of shoes. The cobbler was not put off. I will give you a fine horse, my own favorite bay, a cloak of the finest cloth, and a feathered hat in addition to the leather shoes. Odious hesitated. A bargaining sense which had grown dormant suddenly revived. How about a fine bow, 5 arrows, and a new leather apron, too? Agreed, said the cobbler, and Odious made the ring. It was only a few days before the carpenter's wife wanted a ring as well. Odious agreed if the carpenter would build a small barn for the horse on a piece of land he had set aside for his son. It was a choice parcel in the middle of the hill above the carpenter's house. Reluctantly, the carpenter assented. My son is only 9, he said. There will be another place for him when he is old enough to marry. Soon the mason and the woodsman approached Odious and agreed to build him a house of stone and wood above the barn if he would make rings for their wives and daughters. A larger home than your own? Odious asked. Larger than either of ours, said the mason. The woodsman nodded consent. Soon Odious had a thriving business and lost interest in forging iron and making shovels. A gold bracelet he made for the healer's wife created a new sensation, and soon Odious had furniture for his own house, livestock, an abundance of flour and canned fruits and vegetables, a towering woodpile, and a fine assortment of tailored clothes. He had never been happier, riding his horse through the village in his red cloak and feathered gold hat, and accepting the smiles and warm greetings of an admiring populace. Only the elders, the blacksmith's family, and a few more seemed saddened by it all, especially Raven, who seldom saw him anymore. Neither did she wear her ring. Something is wrong with all of this, said the blacksmith to his wife. She agreed. The elders were almost silent, since they did not know what to say. Soon there will be no more gold, said one of them. Then Harmony will be as it was before. Before long, Odious realized that there were only a few gold coins and nuggets left in his purse, and he feared an end to his good fortune. At first, he raised the price of a gold ring beyond all limits, but even so, the mayor's wife insisted on having one, as if there was no price too great to pay. Odious enlarged his house, built a stone cellar, and filled it with the finest wines, accumulated more clothes and livestock, and built another barn. Soon he was the richest man in all of Harmony, but he knew he must have more gold to ensure his place of honor in the village. He recalled the summers in prosperity when he had panned for flakes of gold in mountain streams with his uncle. One spring day he addressed the miner who was waiting to unload his wagon of ore outside the blacksmith shop. I would like to ride my horse and accompany you to the Red Mountain tomorrow when you go to gather iron ore, he said. It is a difficult journey, said the miner. Although the heavy snow is only on the distant Explorer Mountains, the land is heavy with water and the Singing River is dangerously swollen and difficult to cross. "My horse is strong," said Odious eagerly. "I will meet you early in the morning." He felt a strange excitement. Each day after that, Odious accompanied the miner and his son to the Red Mountain. While they were digging the ore and carrying it across the river into the wagon, Odious explored an ancient riverbed and gravel promontories for traces of gold. One day, after a week of searching, his effort was rewarded. He found a large gold nugget lodged in a crevice near the bank of the Singing River. The following day, he gathered loose gravel nearby and rotated it carefully in a shallow pan, which he had dipped gently into the water. After a few minutes of sifting, he saw abundant flakes of gold in the black residue and knew that the area was rich in deposits. He returned home without mentioning a word about his discovery, and that night dreamed he had found a vast cavern of the purest gold. The following days he rode off with the miner and his son and vigorously panned for gold. He found 4 more small nuggets at bedrock and filled a small leather pouch with the bright gold flakes. He said nothing of his success to anyone, of course not, and made 2 more bracelets for additional livestock, fine card furniture, and 4 young servants, the children of his clients, to attend his every need. The servants were a novelty, since no one in Harmony had ever worked outside his own home or the trade of his own family. Before long, the mayor and the healer had servants as well. The elders were aghast and cited an ancient saying: "To yoke a man or woman like an ox or ass is to defile the ground and make the stars ashamed." But no matter what the elders said, no one seemed to listen. For the first time, strident arguments were more common in the square than friendly conversations and song. The miller refused a pair of shoes for a sack of fine flour and demanded a leather purse as well. The potter and woodsman quarreled over the value of logs, and the tanner doubled the price of his leather. Soon the quality of work and material diminished, and housewives complained that the flour was too coarse for fine bread. The cobbler made 3 grades of shoes, and the mason and woodsman traded inferior products. Only a few, like the blacksmith and the miner, were saddened by the transformation, but soon all had to work longer hours to afford what had once been taken for granted. The elders seemed despondent when theft and drunkenness became common, and bands of young men and women gathered at night in the square to pass the time away from their families. It was as if parents had lost their authority and a pestilence had taken possession of numerous hearts. The elders rang the church bells for a special meeting of the council, and less than half of the village attended. Despite the poor attendance, the most eloquent of the elders addressed the assembly in a strong, confident voice. "Madness has come to our village, and a dark cloud has settled over the Explorer Mountains. There's quarreling and discontent and a greed we have never known before. Men and women ignore the beauty of the spirit and pay homage to trinkets of gold. Already there are factions of discontent, and soon there will be war. We must take some action, or the viper will swallow the mouse who is made sleepy by his strange movements. We must act soon." A woman spoke firmly. "The stranger Odious must be sent away. He lords it over the people and seduces them with his gold. My own children would rather have gold than to learn the trade of their father." "It is too late to send Odious away," said the blacksmith. "The whole village has been infected. We must fight back." "But how?" asked the elder quietly. The miner stood up to address the assembly. "The blacksmith and I have been talking," he said hesitantly. "Perhaps